Interest rate is a cornerstone of engineering economics. If you don't understand interest rate properly, you will not be able to make much progress in engineering economics, which is a standalone section on the FE Electrical and Computer exam. Interest rate is going to impact your calculations involving time value of money, annuity, present worth, future worth, gradient. It is also going to impact cost-benefit analysis, inflation, depreciation, and break-even analysis. In this webinar that I conducted with my FE Electrical and Computer exam preparation students, I went over simple interest rate versus compound interest rate, and also did a few practice problems to help them understand the difference. And then I did an overall review of the FE Electrical and Computer exam specification and how you should be approaching this exam in order to effectively prepare for and pass the exam in the first attempt. So without further ado, let us dive into the content. Interest rate is relatively simple concept. It is the cornerstone of entire engineering economics. Okay. In fact, I would venture to say that interest rate is arguably the single most important parameter that economically impacts our financial lives. Do you guys agree or not? We've gone through this, right? We've gone through near zero interest rates during COVID. What happened? Inflation. And we went through recently, in recent past, in the last couple of years, very high interest rates. And what happened? Okay. So interest rate is arguably within engineering economics, within the world of economics, the single most important parameter that has an outsized impact on everything. And my goal by the end of today's session, in the next 15, 20, 30, 35 minutes, is to leave you with a much clearer understanding of how interest rate works, which interest rate you should use in which scenario. Okay, guys? So let us start with something called simple interest rate. It is very simple, but it's no longer used. Okay, it's not used for any calculations as far as your taxation is concerned, your bonds are concerned, your loans and credits and mortgage. Simple interest rate is not used, but it is a starting point, and it is something that will help us understand what the compound interest rate is. Okay, simple interest rate. If you look at an example, let's say you have a friend, you have your sibling, your cousin, your family member, someone close to you who you want to help out, but not really squeeze, okay, in terms of assisting them in their financial help, okay, with their financial scenario. You're like, I'm going to go ahead. Yes, this is engineering economics, interest rate. You say that I'm going to go ahead and give you 10K. All right, you're my friend. And I'm going to charge you simple interest rate. And the interest rate is 10% per year. And I'm going to ask you for interest plus the principal, the loan that I gave you at the end of year 5. All right. Now you are actually doing a big favor to this fellow by having the condition of simple interest rate versus compound interest rate. Why? Because the formula for simple interest rate, which I don't even think is mentioned in the reference handbook for FE Electrical or P Power, is that your principal multiplied by the interest rate multiplied by the compounding periods. Actually, interest rate periods, not compounding periods. So for 5 years, each year, you're charging 10% on 10K, okay? And the final payment that you can expect to receive is about $15,000, right? Now, if we compare this to a scenario where you're like, I'm going to charge compound interest, okay, at 10% per year, all right? And you have to give me a lump sum payment at the end of year 5. The formula for compound interest is that at the end of year number 1, 10K, when we do a 10% on it, leaves you with 11K, right? And the setup over here is that this fellow is actually not paying you regular interest. It's all being compounded and being paid in one shot at the end of year 5. Okay. So you go from $10,000 to $11,000 at the end of year one. And the thing is that your next year's interest rate is not going to be calculated on the original loan amount. It will be calculated on $11,000, which roughly makes it, 12,100 or something like that. And then the following year it will be on 12,000 whatever, and then the following year it will be on 13,000 whatever, right? And this is by default the type of interest rate that we use in practice for all business transactions, loans, credits, mortgages, taxation, bond, and so on and so forth. Okay, so the difference over here is not that significant. You're like, okay, what's a big deal? 15K versus 16.1K, right? So you did your friend a favor of about $1,000, $1,100 and change. Sure, good for you, right? But compounding, and this quote is attributed to Einstein, I believe, where it said that it is the eighth wonder of the world. There are a lot of things that are attributed to Einstein, which actually are not true. Okay. But it is a really powerful force, compounding. Okay. If we give ourselves a long enough runway, then compounding can be extremely significant, right? So looking at this example of simple interest rate, what your friend owed you at the end of year one was $11,000. And same thing for the compound interest rate. Fast forward 5 years with the simple interest rate where you were just taking the principal, multiplying it by the interest rate, multiplying it by the number of periods, 15K. Okay. But over here, we were taking compounding into consideration. We, in year number 2, were charging interest not on the original amount of 10K, but on the interest plus principal at the end of that time period. So we ended up going to $16,000. If we extend this all the way to 40 years, 4 decades, this guy would have owed you only $50,000 with a simple interest rate. But with the compound interest rate, it would have been close to $500,000. There is a 9x difference rounded up to about 10x difference. And this is the key between simple, key observation, key distinction, key difference between simple interest rate and compound interest rate. All right. Compounding is very good, desirable when it works in your favor. When compounding works against you, it becomes a bottomless pit from which it becomes almost impossible for people, for countries, for companies to ever come out of. Okay. So if you have investments, if you have dividends, if you have interest that you are accruing, that you are basically gaining with your investments, then you want as much compounding to happen at as high rate as possible for as long duration as possible. But if it works against you, it can be extremely devastating. Any questions on this so far, guys? Do you have a better understanding of what simple compounding is, simple interest rate is, and what the compound interest rate is, right? Okay, so this is just very elementary, basic, foundational stuff. When we move on to our exam scenario, what we need to get a handle on are these 3 very confusing terms, all right? And if you are properly able to understand them, I believe that it will help you unlock engineering economics at least 50%. Okay. There are still other things that need to be learned in terms of time value of money, cost benefit analysis, break-even analysis, bonds and stuff. But the point is that with a wishy-washy understanding of interest rate, no matter how much time you spend on time value of money, break-even analysis, Okay, cost benefit analysis, gradients, annuities, future values, interest rate tables, bonds, taxation, nothing is going to matter. Inflation, nothing is going to matter if you don't get a handle on the interest rate. Okay, so just give me 5-10 minutes and hopefully you'll have a better understanding. Unless mentioned otherwise, any interest rate that is provided to you in a problem statement, mentioned on a news bulletin, in a newspaper, wherever you come across, it's considered to be an annual interest rate that is compounded only once a year. Does it make sense? If there is no prefix, no suffix attached to an interest rate percentage, you assume it to be compounding once every year, okay, at that given rate. Now, when we start adding some caveats, some qualifiers to them, then we have to be really, really careful. So the stated or the annual interest rate does not consider the effect of any compounding. It is the annual rate that is compounded only once a year, okay? Once a year compounding is happening. We never use simple interest rate, by the way. We never use simple interest rate anymore. The nominal interest rate is the interest rate or the stated interest rate or the annual interest rate where compounding is happening only once a year. Now, interest rate per period is basically your nominal interest rate divided by the number of interest compounding periods. The way that this starts going in different directions, so this goes in this direction now, and this goes in a different direction, is that I have compounding happening once per year. I have compounding now happening multiple times per year. Okay? These two guys are connected. They're actually different sides of the same coin. Whereas this guy is completely different. Are you guys following me? Effective interest rate, by definition, has multiple compounding periods at play. Okay? Interest rate per period means what is the rate in a subset of period, okay, less than 1 year. These two are connected and this is basically standalone. Does it make sense, guys? As far as effective interest rate is concerned, what we try to do is we try to come up with an effective annual interest rate that cooks in the effect of multiple compounding periods. All right, I'll show you with the help of an example, it will make more sense. But starting out and keeping these, by keeping these in front of you, nominal interest rate compounding happens only once a year. It is also known as stated or the annual interest rate. Effective annual interest rate means that there are multiple compounding periods, but I am going to take all of them into consideration and come up with one interest rate that basically gives me the same effect of all of those compounding periods, but rolled into only one interest rate. Okay. An interest rate per period basically tells you that for each compounding period, and by definition, an interest rate per period, you're looking at more than one compounding per year, then it tells you what is that compounding period. So let's take a look at this example and it will make sense. Your local bank is offering you a nominal interest rate of 6% for the savings account. So how many times is compounding happening if I just stop here? If I just don't read past this statement, this line, this is nominal and annual interest rate, 6%. How many times each year 6% is going to be applied on the outstanding principal? Is there any reason for you to believe anything other than one? No. It is only once a year. Make sense? Only once. All right. Now, the second part of this problem statement is saying that if the interest rate is compounded monthly. Now, our original assumption of once per year after we continue with this problem statement. Is it true anymore? No, because it is compounded monthly. So what are we going to do? First, calculate the interest rate per period and then effective annual interest rate. All right, guys. So now that 6%, we know that we have multiple compounding periods now per month. So there are 12 months in a year. The nominal interest rate is 6%. Okay, this is where you have to pay attention. Now, when I take 6% and divide it by 12, I end up with 0.50%. So, which means that now we are going to compound the principal every month at this rate because there is monthly compounding happening. This builds on top of what was initially provided to us, but this is monthly compounding. This is no longer same as your plain old 6% once per year. Okay, this is how you calculate interest rate per month or interest rate per compounding period. Here, we have taken into consideration that we have 12 months, 12 compounding periods. We have taken into consideration that our stated rate is 6%. We are going to figure out for monthly compounding, what is the interest rate that we should apply. Now, what really brings everything together is annual effective interest rate. Now, the formula is given in both FE Electrical as well as the P Power reference handbook. In fact, the entire engineering economics section in those reference handbooks is identical. The goal over here, guys, is that I want to come up with just 1%, okay, that I'm going to apply once a year, okay, to give me the effect of monthly compounding. All right. And that is this formula. And what this formula is telling me is when you punch in the nominal interest rate, which takes only one compounding per year, and the problem statement is saying that actually compounding is happening 12 times a year on a monthly basis. This is that M, and we end up calculating this as 6.16%. Intuitively, you would have thought that if I'm compounding more frequently, more regularly, then the effective interest rate, the amount that I will owe to my creditor is going to be more because the creditor is actually charging me interest more frequently. Correct? And that's exactly what it is. So now if I take 6.16%, and this is going to be the aha moment. Let's say we took 10K, right? 10K today, right? And if we are being charged 0.50%, okay? So 10K today, 0.50% plus 0.50% at the end of year one is going to be this amount, right? But this is going to be 12 compounding periods. Are you guys following me over here? Right? Because this rate is being charged every single month. Correct? So after 12 months, you're going to get this amount. Can somebody do this calculation? Whereas if I'm using annual effective interest rate of 6.16%, I'm going to do this 6.16%. And what will be the value over here? Just 1. Because I have cooked in, right, the effect of multiple compounding periods using this formula over here, right, into this one equation. All right. 15K, I don't think that's right. This should be, this is 0.50%. So you have to use it as a decimal, 0.005, I believe. Okay. Yeah, so that sounds more right. 616. Okay. Yep. And what about this? What do we have over here? 1 plus 6.16% raised to the power of 1 multiplied by 10K. Okay. What is this? Same amount, right? 10, 6, 1, 6. Does it make sense? Can someone confirm that these are the same? All right, so let's take a step back and see what happened over here. If you can spend 1 minute, 60 seconds or less, understanding the difference and the similarities in all three of them, my job is done, right? You basically walk away from this session appreciating what the nominal annual interest rate was, what was our interest rate per period, how we ended up using it, and what was our annual effective interest rate. So this guy, 6%, okay, stated rate, annual rate, nominal rate, just told you that, hey, this is the market rate going on an annual basis. This is what the bank is offering. We're going to charge you 6% once per year and off you go. But then your terms and conditions for your mortgage, for your loan, whatever you're doing, car financing and refinancing, whatever it is, it says that, you know what, we are actually going to charge you compound interest on a monthly basis, right? Then you go back and you're like, okay, let me figure out if it is compound interest on a monthly basis, then my cost of borrowing is not going to be just simple 6% per year. I want to look at it, how it's going to impact me on a monthly basis, and what if I roll everything up into one interest payment, right? When you look at this, you're like, compounding is happening on a monthly basis. So this is how many time periods, guys? 12. This is where 12 is coming from. And you can come up with quarterly, you can come up with daily, you can come up with multiple variations of that, semi-annually, okay, weekly. And then you are like, 6% is the annual rate, but essentially I am basically going to be, this is my interest rate per period, okay? The number of periods become very important over here. This is 0.50, which I'll be charged every month. Now, this is linked to what is our nominal interest rate. What is our annual interest rate? What is our stated interest rate, for which there is only one compounding per year. Okay, but it is different because we end up using this interest rate for 12 periods, not for once a year. Clear? Now, there are scenarios, and in my program, both FE Electrical and PE Power, we work through time values of money, annuity gradient, where the payment frequencies are, let's say, once a year, but compounding is happening monthly. Okay, are you guys following me? The payment frequency, annuity by definition, is once per year. Okay, but compounding is happening monthly. In that case, we have to somehow take into consideration what is the effect of compounding, which is happening monthly. But since my payment frequency is once a year, I need to convert that into one interest rate that captures it. And that's where the annual effective interest rate comes into play. Are you guys following me here? So this guy is different from the nominal annual interest rate in that it does take into consideration the monthly compounding that happens. Okay. It is similar in the sense that we can apply it once a year and get the effect of monthly compounding. It is different from the interest rate per period because we only have one compounding period. Okay. So when you see this, I used 1 over here, right? Because our compounding period was 1. But it is similar to interest rate per month, interest rate per period, in the sense that it takes multiple compounding into consideration. Okay. Now you can imagine that you have a full-blown 1-paragraph question on the FE Electrical exam or the PE Power exam. Okay. And interest rate essentially is your starting point. And then it asks you to do cost benefit analysis, break even analysis, time value of money, gradient, annuity, a combination, the whole 9 yards. Do you think that if you don't make a correct assessment of the interest rate, if you don't start out with the interest rate properly, do you stand a chance solving that problem down the road? because that analysis has not even started yet. Whether you end up using 0.50, okay, whether you end up using 6.16 or 6%, okay, and then combining it with the right compounding period to use in your calculations. These are essentially 3-4 different paths you can take, and you cannot sleepwalk your way through these problems. And that's what makes engineering economics challenging. All right. And this slide over here gives you an idea that if you're starting with a 10% annual interest rate and we start increasing the compounding periods, and you can prove this to yourself, this is essentially annual effective interest rate formula in play. Then if you're doing semi-annual, like twice a year instead of once a year, your effective annual interest rate is 10.25, quarterly, monthly, daily. And each one of these calculations, when they fed into the present value, when they fed into the future value, when they fed into annuity, gradient, break-even analysis, cost-benefit analysis, taxation, bonding, inflation, is going to pump out different answers. Okay? So I hope you have a better understanding and appreciation of interest rate, of nominal interest rate, simple interest rate, compound interest rate, effective interest rate, and interest rate per period. If anything, I do hope that at the very least, you walk away from this session knowing how important interest rate is and how carefully it needs to be handled. So FE Electrical and Computer exam, 10,000 foot view of what is involved, and it will actually help you understand how it is different from PE power and what are the different approaches that we need to take. I have coined this term the big 5 sections for FE Electrical. This is several years ago, and I've noticed that across different platforms, people started using it. I see this pop up every now and then on Reddit, on LinkedIn and stuff as well. So the big 5 topics, these are math, circuits, electronics, power, and digital systems as far as FE Electrical is concerned. And they are important because they amount to about 50% of the exam by weightage. So just very basic math, if 50% of the exam you end up being below average, you have to be above average in the remaining 50%. The remaining 50% contains 12 sections, whereas this 50% contains 5 sections, a total of 17 in total, right? So the question is, do you think it's easy to be above average in 5 out of 17? Or is it easier to be above average in 12 out of 17? I think it's easier to be average, above average, close to average in 5 by 17. Okay? And the other thing is that these sections, especially circuits, impacts electronics, and then power systems and linear systems, a little bit of communications, and so on. So I tell my students, and when we conduct our live training sessions, which is currently ongoing, and the next one is about to start soon as well, that our goal is to basically stay above average over here. Okay? If we stay above average, then our chances of passing the exam are going to be much, much higher. If we are below average over here, chances of passing the exam are much, much lower. Then we have the first 4 or 5 sections. If you include math, it becomes 5. Otherwise, it's 4. What's going on over here is these are general sections. Okay, every FE discipline ends up taking this exam: probability, ethics, and econ, properties of electrical materials, a variation of it, and obviously math. So easy to hit it out of the park, relatively speaking, and that's what the goal should be. Some of the most intimidating sections in FE Electrical and Computer exam specification are computer topics, largely because a lot of people, especially power systems engineer, they tend to skip these in their undergraduate studies. And if you graduated 15 years ago or maybe 20 years ago, I have several students who have been in that bucket, are in that bucket, in that category, then chances are that these courses were not even offered when you were graduating, right? So I tell my students that the risky approach is to actually do selective studying, which I'm never in favor of. And within my program, I basically go through all of these topics in depth. So we need to make sure that we at least have a fundamental understanding in these sections. And then we have miscellaneous sections, linear systems, signal processing, EMAC, control systems, communications, and so on and so forth. Now, these sections are kind of all over the place, but there is a through line in them in the sense that they're math intensive. Lots and lots of math is in here, right? So you have signal processing, linear systems, communications. They're all math intensive. Lots of trigonometry, lots of algebra, lots of transforms. And if you approach them from a mathematical lens, they do become a little bit easier. If you take a pure conceptual, like I want to understand communications inside out, without any practice, it becomes difficult, right? So the middle path is the way to go when we are dealing with them. Have a good handle on mathematical concepts and then combine it with at least fundamental theory, and your job is going to be a lot more easier. So this in a nutshell is a review of all 17 sections of FE Electrical. The biggest challenge, just to summarize, in FE Electrical remains the fact that you have so much ground to cover. And if you take a step back and look at it, practically you are doing your entire undergraduate electrical engineering coursework review all over again. And then during the exam, they actually push the time pressure on you, right? 3 minutes per question is not easy. So that's FE Electrical. If you are interested in FE Electrical and computer exam preparation, I have a full-blown on-demand program, 250 lectures, over 100 quizzes, mini exams that are timed, and the study guide, some of you are probably familiar with it. It is the highest rated book on Amazon. Within the program, you have practice exams, computer-simulated practice exams. I have authored 3 sample exams, practice exams on Amazon as well. And then I have an ongoing live training program where we meet on a weekly basis and go through these concepts in more detail with more practice problems in order to basically work through the content. Similarly, for the P-Power, I run the sessions simultaneously every week. I'm conducting FE Electrical classes, P-Power classes. About 80% of the coursework is in the on-demand self-study. A lot of my students simply choose the on-demand format, self-study format. They work through the content at their own pace. And about 20, 30, 40% of the students add the live training on top of it. And then they basically value the streamlined guidance on a weekly basis. Now, how is this program going to help you, whether you're preparing for the FE Electrical or the P-Power? The idea is that I tell my students, that there is no shortage of information. What I'm presenting you, maybe in some way, shape, or form, or to a higher or a lower effectiveness, you will be able to find, okay? There is no doubt about it. There is no shortage of information. But what I am providing you is less friction. This is a one-stop shop, and those of you who want to stick around for just 5 more minutes, I'll show you how everything is organized in the program, what is the support network, the support structure, and how it makes your life easier to work through the content. I assume that majority of you are working full-time and you have other personal and professional commitments as well, right? So reduction in friction in the denominator is going to increase the value proposition of this program. Higher likelihood of passing the FE Electrical or the P-Power exam, and the timeline as well, right? So the information that I just shared with you, I would assume that in the last 15, 20, 30 minutes, maximum 20 minutes, right? To have that systematically broken down for you with example, with differences, with overlaps, those 20, 30 minutes is probably going to take you at least 2x, 3x, maybe up to 4x time-wise for you to really have an understanding, okay, this is what the difference is. And then when you throw it with the backdrop of preparing for these particular exams, and even between these 2 exams, we've seen upfront that there's a significant difference, right? When we look at the FE Electrical and computer exam, and we look at the P-Power exam, although they are essentially along the same line of, they're conducted by the same body and they essentially lead you to the same goal, these 2 exams themselves are very different, right? So as far as the value proposition is concerned, this is a value proposition that the likelihood is going to be higher, the timeline is going to be condensed, and it's going to be a lot more frictionless, okay? I have tons of reviews, students tagging me, posting reviews all the time on LinkedIn. In fact, seems like a lot of you guys are here from LinkedIn. Students are talking about the program on Reddit. I have an entire success story series on my YouTube channel. A lot of people find my program from there for both FE Electrical, PE Power, almost on weekly, bi-weekly basis. You'll see a lot of these stories basically pop up. Okay. The book, study guide book, is not part of the bundle, but it is currently on sale, and Amazon runs sales all the time. As far as I know, it's about 10-20% off right now, and they typically have the book on sale multiple times a year, and it currently is. So let me show you guys what the program looks like on the inside. Seeing is believing. So consider this as a very brief demo. Everything is currently on a 10% discount. When you look at the FE Electrical program, just quickly scroll through it, right? This is the on-demand content. And what I tell my students is the on-demand content is about 70-80% of the program. This is math. Every single line item, every single topic is broken down, okay? You have multi-part lecture series on algebra, for example. In every lecture, you're going to find a downloadable spreadsheet, one-pager, that tells you what are the most important equations, that tells you what are the key things that you need to remember. And then these lectures contain a mix of simple theoretical explanations, the ones that you sort of experience right now, with practice problems that I've worked through in the content. So it's a combination of theory plus practice. And then after every lecture, you can expect quizzes with detailed solutions. And at the end of every section, so if you keep an eye on the left-hand side of the panel, right, you have discrete math, multi-part lecture series on matrix. If you've been out of school for like more than 5 years, this is probably what you're looking for in terms of a quick refresher of some of the basics over here. Okay, then you have probability, multi-part lecture series on probability, laws of probability, everything broken down in a small stepwise manner. If a concept is challenging, more difficult, then I basically, like Bayes' theorem is arguably the most difficult topic within probability, then you're going to see me doing additional practice problems where they become progressively more challenging, okay? And then deep dives, and then mini exams and so on. The mini exams are all timed, and they help you under time pressure. So let me just quickly show you a sample mini exam. And you can take these mini exams as many times as you like. Those of you who've taken the exam previously, you probably realize this interface and it's kind of scary, right? The blue screen with the timer, with a flag, and especially if you're in a repeat situation. But imagine yourself going through the program, coming across this blue screen 17 times during your preparation. Does it ring a bell, guys? You guys have seen this, some of you, right? So the timer gives you 3 minutes per question. On average, you have 10, 15, 20 questions. Smaller section, less questions. Bigger section, more questions, and so on and so forth. And then essentially at the end of every mini exam, you're going to get very detailed diagnostics, right? So this is ethics, professional practice. Now let me show you the computer sections. So circuits. If you have zero background in electrical engineering and circuit analysis, I've actually have multiple mechanical engineers go through my program and pass it on the first attempt. If you're starting KCL, KVL from scratch, you don't have to worry. Everything is laid out. Multi-part lectures, quizzes, detailed solutions, and everything. Okay, but let me quickly show you this. Let me show you, like, for example, three-phase systems as well. Detailed overview of everything. But let us jump into, and I like to do a lot of derivations, a lot more derivations in my PE Power program than FE Electrical because it's a balancing act. But still, check out the computer sections. I'm really proud of them. The reason is that a lot of folks in the FE Electrical program, the PE Power program, don't really have a very strong background in computers. And this is computer networks. Effort to reward ratio is messed up because you have only 4 questions on the exam and about 16 pages of reference material. But check this out. IPv4, IPv5, IPv6, multi-parts, UDP, TCP. If all of this is flying over your head, don't worry. If you haven't taken any computer networks course, don't worry. This breakdown of all the topics, the practice, is going to help you understand the concepts inside out, even if you're starting from zero, from scratch. And same thing for digital systems, same thing for computer systems, same thing for computer networks. Okay. By signing up for the program, you also get access to the community. This is integrated into the course. And if you have any questions, then you can simply post a question under FE Electrical, the relevant section, and you'll basically get an answer, right? So you can see that it's a pretty active community. Students are asking questions all the time, and they're getting responses within about 4 to 6 hours in depth, okay? The live training is conducted, the whole 17 sections are divided in 12 weeks, and we go through them. At any point when you join the live training, you get access to the current round of live training and the next one, right? So we are in week 5 right now for FE Electrical and PE Power. By joining right now, you'll get week 6, week 7, week 8, week 9, and this rides on top of the on-demand content, right? And by joining right now, you will be able to participate in all of these live training sessions. You'll have instant access to everything that has already been done, right? In the live training, you get additional homework assignments. We hop on a call every single week. We review the homework assignments. There are focus summary reviews, what I like to call master classes, like a crash course style review, and then all the recordings, obviously, of these sessions. All right. So those of you who stayed until the end, thanks a lot for your time. I hope you extracted some value out of it. And if you're interested in a streamlined exam preparation resource for FE Electrical and PE Power exam prep, then please visit my website, www.studyforfe.com. You'll find a lot of details over here, and feel free to send me an email. And I look forward to seeing you guys if you pursue with this in my program and fast tracking your exam preparation. Thank you.